Hello, everybody. Welcome to Studio Sessions. If this is your first time tuning in, this is our regular live stream session where we interview fellow creative minds in the design, marketing, and content industry. My name is Shazia Khan. I am the social media strategist at Globe Content Studio, which is the content marketing arm of the Globe and Mail. If you're new to us, what we do is we work with a variety of marketers and advertisers to connect their brands to our big national audience through the beautiful magic of original content and storytelling. So today's topic, I think, is a particularly timely one: social media. I feel like it's all we've been talking about lately, and we've been having some really deep conversations about what's been happening in that space. So that's why I am super excited and grateful to be speaking to a true long-term expert in this space. Sarah Bujaya is currently the VP of Marketing at Later, which is a name I'm sure many of my fellow SMMs in the crowd will know very well. As the first to market Instagram scheduler in 2014, Later, formerly known as Latergram, has grown into the top visual marketing platform for Instagram, for Facebook, Twitter, and Pinterest, with now over 7 million users globally and growing, probably right as we speak. Sarah, welcome to this session, and thanks so much for joining us.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm very excited to be here to talk about such a hot topic.
Thanks. Yes, and we were just saying on the eve of Black Friday, could our timing be any better?
I know, right? I would say social media plays a fairly important role going into this weekend. So it's a very exciting time.
Absolutely. For sure. So I guess to kick things off, I'd love to start by just learning a little bit more about you. Your Marvel origin story in a nutshell. How did you get into the world of social media? And I think I remember you saying you a relatively new member to the Later team. So how you ended up there specifically?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been in marketing for over a decade, and I would say, I was always on this path, and I was always enamored by the media. And so what the media became was something that I think was unpredictable for a lot of us. So did I know while I was in university what social media would become or what it stood to be? Absolutely not. TikTok didn't exist. Facebook barely existed. Instagram was a lot of this didn't exist. And I'll say that my job in 10 years doesn't exist yet either. And so I was always very, very much an early adopter. I ran ads as early as you could on Facebook back in the day, and worked in the retail e-commerce space, went into startups, and most recently worked in fintech, and then joined the Later team, which has been amazing and really kind of brings me back to my roots of social media.
Oh, sorry about that. I think my screen froze, but yeah, that's awesome. You've had quite a journey, it sounds like. I like to joke too that I feel like in social media, the whole idea of like 5-year, 10-year career plan, that's dead, because what you're doing now didn't exist 5 years ago, 10 years ago, and what you're doing in the future, same thing. So,
Exactly.
yeah,
Exactly.
totally. So speaking of social media and what a juggling act it can be, I guess for those who aren't really aware of Later, can you tell us a little bit more about the platform today? I know it's undergone quite an evolution, and I know you're still relatively new to the team, but a little bit more about what Later's all about.
Sure. Well, yeah, fun fact, I was a Latergram user back in the day. So I feel like I've been on a journey with the company for a long time, even though I joined the team just earlier this year. Later is a social media management tool. We also have Link in Bio, which is a big claim to fame for us. So we were, the beginning of Link in Bio, and what that's kind of become. There's a lot of different versions, but you can count on us for Link in Bio. Later allows you to plan, analyze, and publish your content in advance. So when you see brands or small businesses posting at 6 o'clock in the evening or 7 o'clock in the morning, it allows social media managers and entrepreneurs and small business owners and creators all the same to be able to live their life while still doing right by their social media accounts. I think we'll have Shazia back in just a moment. So in the meantime, I can give a little bit of context too, just about my background. So in terms of working in marketing, I think that's a constantly evolving domain, as Shazia mentioned. Our jobs tend to be really different in the future to what they are now and what they were 10, 20 years ago. Uh, I think long gone are the days of, traditional media plans and, just buying some billboards and some TV spots and calling it a day. Marketing has become so much more sophisticated and interesting, in my opinion, where it can feel like it's hard to keep up with everything, but there is so much opportunity and so much to learn that if you can approach it that way, it definitely can reap its rewards. I think it's really nice to see your work in market. It's really nice to see what kind of impact you can make on the audience or business that you serve. And I think we're more in a place where it's less like, let's throw stuff at the wall and see what sticks, but really, let's throw stuff at the wall because we have a better idea of what sticks. And so it's a really cool place to be, but also does require a bit of effort and constant learning. So in terms of trends, I would say in the marketing space, it's constantly changing and it's a tough place to stay on top of. It goes without saying, TikTok is extremely important. And what makes TikTok so powerful is also the element of audio and catching on to what those top tracks dances are and whatnot, and finding ways to make that fun and interesting and creative. And so it's kind of creating this new domain of creative marketers that don't even realize that that's what they're doing. So it's very cool to see all the different opportunities present themselves.
Awesome. So sorry about that. I had a little bit of a tech issue there. So I missed a bit of your answer, but thanks so much to my team for filling in. This is the beauty of social media and the internet. It's always keeping us on our toes. But yeah, okay. So I guess turning more of the current zeitgeist of what's been happening in our space. So I think one thing, I've been listening to this new podcast from the New York Times. It's called Hard Fork. It's an interesting title. It's a great podcast for anyone who's obsessed with tech. I really recommend it. But on it a few weeks ago, reporter Kevin Roose, he threw out a bit of a, I guess you could call it a spicy take, or maybe it was like a little bit of a thought experiment suggesting social media could be on the decline. I think he even toyed with the idea, like, is social media dying? Now, of course, we work in this space and we love this space, so we're really hoping that is not true. However, I, and perhaps you as well, may have seen some other thought leaders in the space start to toy with the question as well and ask it out loud, particularly given all the developments recently at Twitter, at Meta, at a whole bunch of, tech companies, big and small. Yeah. I'm curious, how are you thinking about this evolution? Is there reason to be concerned about where social media is going? Or are you thinking, actually, this is a moment to be a little bit more hopeful or inspired about what's to come?
I love that question. I think there's a couple of things I would want to break down. And the question is around, is social media on the decline, or should social media be on the decline? Mm-hmm. And I think that given, some of the challenges that exist in this space, there's definitely sentiment in all forms around what social media should be, what it should look like, and how it ought to evolve. Mm-hmm. Personally, I don't see it going anywhere. I think it's the first thing a lot of us check when we wake up. It does have tremendous value. And with that, with great responsibility, we also have, with great power, we have great responsibility when it comes to social media. And so there's a lot of things to consider in the space. Uh, and no, I ultimately, I don't think it's on the decline. I think it's changing, but with all technology and what we've seen in the last 5, 10, 20 years, and then if we kind of zoom out to the last 100 years, that's what's supposed to happen. It is supposed to change. It is supposed to evolve. And, we're going to learn along the way from what works and what doesn't. And I think as a society, we're also going to determine what we buy into and what we don't buy into. And that always shakes out over time. And I do truly believe that ultimately, we all want that space and have benefited from the different social media spaces that have allowed us to stay connected in ways that have, enriched our lives, entertained us, helped us grow businesses in a way that wasn't possible 15 years ago, and give people exposure and, bring issues to the forefront that just wasn't possible in the past. So I think it's here to stay. I think it stands to change, but I think with anything, there's always a lot of opportunity.
Absolutely. I totally agree. I feel like as long as human beings have human nature, which is we are inherently meant to be social, we want to be social, we want to connect, and we want to do things faster and better. The intersection of those two things, it's always going to mean that social media in some capacity will always exist. It's just what it will look like in the future will probably be dramatically different from what we're used to right now. But yeah, totally. So I guess turning to some of the hot topics we've been talking about lately, the recent acquisition of Twitter in particular has brought back a lot of broader questions or conversations on the concept of brand safety. But as we know, brand safety in this space, it's never been an issue we've had with one app or one site or at one particular time. It's an ongoing perennial part of the gig. We kind of always have to be thinking about it and evolving our understanding of it. What would you say in the current climate, businesses and their social managers should really know or maybe try to keep in mind about brand safety today? Do you have any tips you like to provide for how to maintain brand safety when these platforms are shifting so fluidly?
I think brand safety is a concern for any medium. It's not necessarily exclusive to social media, or just digital media in general. It can have, there's concerns in a lot of cases. And I think that it's inevitable that companies will have missteps along the way. Companies are ultimately as strong as their humans who are at those front lines, who are managing their social media, managing their brands, managing their marketing. And sometimes there are things that we can't see into the future. There are missteps. And there are things that play out around us that are out of our control. And so I think to a certain degree, it's to be expected that there will be some challenges along the way. There's definitely, opportunity as far as working with different platforms to proactively manage that from, different kinds of settings and targeting and things like that. But when you're playing the organic game, I think there's a certain level of, I say common sense is not that common if you don't have it. And so it's a tricky thing. I don't like to say you should exercise common sense because common sense isn't actually that common. But trust that you're hiring the right people to exercise the right judgment, and give that guidance and pay attention to what's going on. It's really important that folks in social media are up to date with what's going on in the world, the news, socially, and conscientious of how they're playing into that, because we play in that sphere. It's all in the same place, and brands aren't immune to what might go on in the post or the tweet below.
Yeah.
And you kind of roll with the punches as you go along. And I think in operating from a consistent, genuine place is really the best way brands can work towards brand safety in the best way that they can.
Absolutely. Yeah. It comes with the territory when you're working in a space or on platforms where all the content is like user generated. You can't control what other people say or think. You kind of have to accept that there's a certain degree of of risk, I guess, involved with that sort of thing. But as long as you can feel confident in your message and your brand and you stand by what you're saying or doing, really, that's the most important thing for sure.
And I think the opportunity cost of not playing in the space is far greater than the potential risk of playing in the space.
For sure. Yes, absolutely. The reward makes the risk worth it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. If you can do it right,
Yes.
You will reap a crazy amount of benefits. It's unreal.
For sure. Yeah, so I guess, speaking of kind of a whole bunch of hot button news stories, are there times when you feel like, especially I feel like in the past year, but it's always been an issue with big tech and these social media platforms, they're always in the news for things that are going on at those organizations or new things that are happening there, or, legal governmental regulations that are evolving in different countries. Do you feel like, are there times when those news stories about the companies themselves should affect our marketing strategy as people who are in those platforms day to day? What advice would you share in terms of when those headlines and that news should influence your strategy versus when it shouldn't? And it's better to kind of consider it more like noise to keep in mind.
I think anything privacy related, we should all take very seriously and deeply respect. So whether or not that's privacy in the US, Canadian, European Union, whatever that might be, I think that's just an important consideration, I think, for every business. Obviously, the bigger you are, the greater the risk is there. And so taking that super seriously in terms of how you approach social media, what you do and do not use, what information you share with these platforms, what level of consent you have, etc. I think anything related to that, we all need to pay attention to and take extremely seriously. Gone are the kind of Wild West days of I guess what was once a bit more of a free-for-all, especially when it comes to social media advertising. That has changed. A lot has gone on, and ultimately, it's better for the user, and it's better for people. And so I think that's a win. Has it made certain elements of marketing a bit more complex and challenging to navigate? For sure, but we're all smart people. We can figure it out. There are ways to still get your message across without having to do something you're not supposed to do. I think that's quite simple. There's always another way. And it also is a forcing function, I think, for creativity.
Yes, absolutely. It's when times are tough, it's a good mindset to be like, well, this is just an opportunity to do something a little more creative, a little more outside of the box than we're used to. That's definitely something we've been talking a lot about at the studio lately. Like, okay, this is a lot harder than it used to be. So how can we do something weird or different to work out of this situation?
Yeah, otherwise it's like same equals same, but the opportunity to be different, to think about things differently. I love to say, and I can't be credited with coming up with this, but there's one thing to follow best practices. It's another thing to actually create them. Mm-hmm. And I personally like to be a part of a team and in an environment where we embrace the idea of creating those best practices, not just following them.
Yes,
that's really better. Yeah.
Absolutely. Awesome. So I guess turning to something a little bit different, I guess I feel like we all have this experience, and I'm sure you've experienced this as well. People, I think, have more outside of digital marketing maybe, but there's kind of a general idea that the perception of working in social media is this very fun, easy, kind of lighter job, something that's usually done by someone who's more junior. We all know the myth of the social media intern. If something broke or some brand made a flub on Twitter, it's like, blame the intern. But as we know in real life, this is actually a very complex job. It's a very complex industry. And as we were just discussing, you almost have to, aside from being creatively adept, really good with data science, really good with analytics, measurement, other things. Now we kind of have to become legal experts a bit, policy experts. So that's just adding another layer of complexity to our work. So I guess maybe just to like start things off, like what do you feel like is like the number one misconception that people have about what it's like to work in this industry, which we can just like quash that rumor right now?
Yeah, I think first and foremost that it's easy. That is hilarious to me. It's not easy. It requires, a really high degree of creativity and thoughtfulness to do it well. It's one thing you can, put up posts, have low engagement, and AKA, not a handful of likes, versus, driving hundreds, if not thousands of views and, likes and engagements and shares and commentary in order to create and manage social media that has that kind of reach. It requires quite a bit of skill. Now, the one thing, the kind of next myth is that it's only a young person's job. It's interesting because in my experience, I use younger loosely because I don't think that age is the best barometer of how good someone is at a job.
For sure.
Because there are folks who are younger than me who are exceptionally better at managing social media than I am. And so I actually give them a lot of credit. And I would say that age doesn't necessarily make you good or bad. There is something to be said for experience and maturity. Sure, that does come with time. But, there are some folks, whether or not it is a young person's job, there are some folks of all different ages who have a knack, who are creative and really good and innately understand how social media works. In my experience, in my own team at Later, it's irrelevant to me how old they are. There are folks who are, fresh out of school who manage social media in a way and create content that, we have TikTok videos getting 400,000 views in the span of a couple weeks. So sure, they might be young, they might be fresh out of school, but guess what? They do their job really well. And that's actually what matters.
For sure. It's like age is very much like a relative concept, or experience is a relative concept in a way. And that's one thing I feel like I also am kind of constantly trying to remind some of our clients about. Like maybe they'll have an idea of our ideal customer or our ideal audience is a certain age, a certain gender, a certain demographic, but it's not. I'll usually go back to them and say, is your ideal customer a Gen Z TikToker age, 13 to 15, or is your ideal customer someone who's really interested in your product and wants to buy it right away? In that sense, it's like maybe we can break down some of these ideas of age or race or class stereotypes about who does this kind of work. And it's like better to just think a little bit more outside of the box when it comes to this stuff.
Yeah, much more broadly. The fact that it's the idea that it's not a real job is absolutely wild to me. Yeah. And I think it more and more also requires a high degree of sophistication and a willingness to learn, especially as the platforms evolve. Formats change, algorithms change. There's all sorts of things to stay on top of and up to date on. And, trend watching is a real thing. It really matters because it determines whether or not you're creating relevant content. And so social media folks need the time and space in order to, understand those things and ultimately be able to do their job well.
Absolutely. Yeah. So I guess it's a very heady topic and it's very serious stuff, but maybe turning to something that's a little bit lighter in nature, thinking ahead to the future of social media. Here at the studio, we're doing a lot of that right on the ground right now. We're looking ahead to 2023 and we're planning our Next in Creative report, which is where we share a bunch of trends to watch out for next year in the world of content marketing more broadly. But I'm curious to get your thoughts on, I'm sure you guys are always ahead of the curve at Later, so I'm curious to get your thoughts on what are some cool social media trends that we should be watching in the new year, whether it's, I know that Later is a very visually led platform, so if there's any interesting visual trends that we should be watching out for, or even just cool apps. I know there's been some new ones in the proliferation of social media apps right now. But yeah, any cool things that you think we should be really paying attention to in 2023?
Yeah, I think we're going to continue. I personally think that we're going to continue to see TikTok dominate. That's not going to go. That's not going to go away. It's only going to, I think, evolve and become even more of a common part of our day to day. And so I see that as being, a continued trend, you could say, so to speak, in 2023. And what comes with that is, from a feature perspective, TikTok continues to evolve and provide creators various tools that almost mean like very much keeps you confined to the platform, which I think will definitely we'll see more of that. I also think we'll start to see other players kind of emerge. Some potential competitors try to participate in the Twitter realm, potentially,
Yeah.
even pay to play platforms like, we'll see Mastodon, and we'll see
Mhm.
other, we'll see other players, I think, try to bust out and participate. I actually think that there may be some interesting things that come from Twitter.
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of change going on, and it will be interesting to see. There will definitely be some changes and some impact as a result. And that, I don't know what that's going to look like exactly. I don't think anybody does, but it's definitely something to pay attention to. I don't think it's going to go away. I
Yeah.
don't want it to go away. I love Twitter,
No.
and I think it stands to evolve, and we'll see how it goes. And then I think visually, there's a few. It depends on the age group as well. There's some trends around, uh, you know, especially from a real TikTok perspective. Like, video is obviously very popular. That's getting favored by the algorithms.
Yeah.
Uh, but as we get into collages, also, I
Oh,
think that there's some early insights into trends around having collages, not in the old Instagram way, but almost like cutouts from different cutouts of different imagery. I think more fun colors coming to the platforms as well. Any, I think brands will just find more interesting ways to stand out,
yeah.
whether or not that's in the feed, whatever that feed might be. And I think, kind of last but not least, so there's this continued trend also of really fast imagery and barely giving the viewer a chance to see what's being shown. I think that will continue, this kind of trend of photo dumps and have everything in one shot versus one photo at a time. That stands to continue, and we'll see kind of how that evolves. Um, and then and then I think music continues to stand to have a huge impact on what some of those trends will end up being.
For sure. Yeah. It feels like this is kind of like a little bit of a music renaissance for it having like very big cultural influence through the power of these like reels and TikTok have really, you know, kind of kickstarted that industry in the butt a little bit too. So that's kind of been exciting to see. But yeah, definitely. I mean, I don't want to be talking all about TikTok because I feel like we always talk about TikTok all the time and how it's like the big thing right now. But it really does feel like that platform, especially, has really changed our behaviors online a little bit so that we're a little bit quicker. It is almost like sometimes subliminal advertising, or that you can know within an instant before you even like actually register what you're seeing, whether you like it or not. And I think that's something that will continue to proliferate across all the apps as well. We'll start to have higher standards for what we want to see or watch or not watch. And I'm
Yeah.
sure all the other platforms are probably taking note of that.
Yeah. I think also, Be Real is something that I do absolutely. I think Be Real is really fun. I think Be Real will continue to get more popular, at least with certain audiences. I think I think GIFs, whatever you want to call them, I think those may start to, I've noticed that they've already started to decline in popularity, and I suspect that they will continue to do so. I also, something that we actually recently wrote about it later is around TikTok SEO, not to talk about TikTok, but
Oh, yeah.
SEO in general, search engine optimization. But social media optimization almost similarly, as there have been reports of, TikTok being the place where Gen Zs get their news and their information, that TikTok ultimately is a search engine in many ways. And so we do suspect that there will be a proliferation of that, and that will continue and really evolve as a major trend as well. And so from a marketing standpoint, we definitely have to think about how we create content and optimize our content, for folks who are looking for certain things on certain platforms, and that will be different, depending on the platform.
For sure. Yeah. It's so interesting you mentioned that, because we've been talking a lot about how there's all these social media competitors that are like now, answering to Google, or like trying to volley for being the next big search engine. And TikTok is one that's just come up over and over. But yeah, it feels like at the end of the day, between that and the trend towards apps like Be Real, it's all about people are trying to refine authenticity and things they can trust. They want to find results they can trust when they are searching for something, or they want to see images that feel real or be real. That's not grammatically correct, but you know what I mean? So it seems like authenticity is kind of like what's the, I guess, the connector between all the different trends we're seeing in the future.
Yep. And it's going to mean different things to different people and different brands.
For sure. Yeah. All right. So I guess we're pretty much at time, but I guess just to lead things off, do you have any final words or any lasting advice that you would want to spread to all of our fellow social managers out there?
Yeah, I would say we operate in an ambiguous place. It's always changing. Nothing is ever really set in stone. And I think being at peace with that and coming to appreciate that as being also a part of what makes it fun and exciting is the fact that our jobs are not the same every day. And to really embrace that, lean into that, because I think a lot of us do what we do because we'd never wanted that monotonous job that was 9 to 5 doing the same thing all day every day.
Yeah.
We consciously didn't sign up for that, right? And so this is the flip side, and it's not always perfect, and there will be bumps along the road, but I think that appreciating the opportunity and the creativity that comes with the domain can make it more enjoyable and help, kind of manage the stress that comes along with the territory.
Yeah.
And just, roll with the punches, because there's a lot of wins along the way, and it can be a fun place if we want it to be.
Yeah, for sure. As someone who's like kind of a little bit more, I guess, type A, or like used to be a little bit more controlling, I've learned that I need to really embrace the unknown, embrace the chaos a little bit, and that you will go a lot further in this industry if you kind of just let go a little bit and just see what the world is like throwing at you.
There's only so much that we can do, and then the rest is going to take its course.
Absolutely. Yeah, so I guess we can pretty much wrap things up there. Thanks so much for taking the time to chat today. I really appreciate it, and thanks again for hanging tight through that little tech glitch. I think your team at Later here put it best. You are a superstar just for that alone. I think it really
that's very nice of them. That's extremely nice of them.
Yeah,
they're incredible. I'm so fortunate to get to work with such a stellar team. So kudos to them.
For sure. And I am very obsessed with their TikTok feed. I'm not going to lie. I mean, it's obviously caters to my interests, but yeah, they seem like rock stars over there.
They're very good. They're very, very good. So yeah.
I guess before we log off, I guess for anyone who's watching who wants to learn more about later.com or follow you or find out what you're up to, what the team is up to there, where can they find you online?
Twitter is probably the easiest, at Sarah Booj. So SARAHBOOJ for me. Later.com, our social handles are Later Media. You can find us on TikTok, Pinterest, Twitter, LinkedIn, Facebook, you name it, we're there. Check out our blog. It is incredible. The team is extremely gifted. We try our best to stay on top of trends and be ahead of them, as you so kindly mentioned, Shazia. So check out our blog, later.com/blog. And that's a great source for anything you need social media related. We're happy to help.
For sure. Yeah. And I know I have that blog bookmarked, so I definitely refresh it periodically, and I recommend it to anybody else who needs that kind of advice as well. All right. And thanks so much to everybody who tuned in today and hung through that little Wi-Fi issue I had. If anyone has any questions about us or thoughts about the session, what you liked, what you didn't like, what you'd like to see next, or just wants to know a little bit more about the work that we do, you can email us. We're at gcs@globeandmail.com, or you can visit our website, which is super easy, just globecontent.studio. When you're on the website, you can actually also subscribe to our newsletter. It's called Studio Vibes, and you can get more behind the scenes content marketing insights there. Don't miss our next episode of Studio Sessions. I won't give away what it is totally, but here's a little hint. If you are a soccer fan, which I'm pretty sure every Canadian kind of has to be right now, I think it's required, or if you're just really interested in podcasts, maybe you want to start one, or you're in that world and would like to learn more about it, I think you'll be particularly interested in our next session. But if you want to find out more about that, just follow us at Globe Content, smash that subscribe button or whatever you got to do to get us into your feeds, and you'll be the first to know when that next episode drops. Thanks again for joining, everybody. Have a wonderful Thanksgiving if you're celebrating, and a good Black Friday, Cyber Monday deals weekend. I'll be thinking of all my fellow digital marketers this weekend. So yeah, hang in there, and until next time.
Thanks, everybody.